This call is now recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Operation M.I.S.T podcast, where we bring on incredible guests to bring information to people listening so that they can show up to every phase of their health, every phase of their life in their best health. And so this conversation, I think, is extremely important because normally the conversations are really more so geared toward moms. What should they be doing before they get pregnant, during pregnancy, following delivery, to make sure that they are heard, seen, valued, and just doing what they can to have the experience that they desire. But for this conversation, we're really talking to everybody because everybody has labs done. For the most part, if you go see a doctor, you're going to have labs drawn, and you should know how to understand those labs. If you go into a doctor's office, you're going to have a medical record. You should know how to interpret that medical record. And so beyond motherhood, it is important to just know this for day-to-day life. And so I'm super excited to learn today. I was so excited. I don't know how long ago it was, Imani, that we met, but it was like one of the most incredible meetings. I know Ashley, I'm in love with her. She introduced us. She has a wonderful mental health organization company called Pack Light. And I mean, you just tell from the name, she's incredible. But she introduced me and Imani, and I've been in awe of her since meeting her, because once she decided maternal health is where I am going to live and stand and support, it has been full speed ahead. And she is just bringing people along who also have a passion for people making informed choices and being able to advocate for themselves, because I think that's really what's missing in maternal health. A lot of what's missing is us being able to understand enough to stand up for ourselves when we need to and make informed decisions. And so she brought Dr. Jackie along. And so it is just like the perfect match. And so I figure, why have two separate conversations when we could have one and get double the knowledge? And so Imani, if you could please introduce yourself to our listeners. And then I would like you to do two things for me. Can you tell them who you are as a person? And then tell us a little bit about what brought you to this wonderful work that you're doing.
Ooh, big questions. So I'm Imani. I am a scientist and founder and educator. I am a Jersey girl by heart, but I would say who I am, like, I've done a lot of work in every aspect of my life and always trying to connect people, always trying to bridge people to one another. I feel like I know every kind of profession there is in the space of Blackness as well, which I think also makes it very special. And so I just feel like I'm a connector, and I'm a person that has tried to use their superpower of overanalyzing every situation and turning it into a profession of being a scientist. So I went to college for forensic science, graduated, and moved to Utah, which really speaks to my exposure in the world. And I continued to work in the lab. I was a quality control chemist for the longest amount of time, working professionally as a scientist, which I think is really a special place because it really catered to just being over analytical about every single tiny little thing. And it was my happy place. It was not customer facing. So you could just put on my Hamilton music soundtrack and I could just do my work. So that's, who I am. I love people. I love interacting. I grew up in a hair salon. Both of my parents were cosmetologists and still practicing. And they also both studied science in college. So hair and science has always been in my family. I have hair businesses as well. My grandmother was a hairstylist and my grandfather was a chemist. So it's just something I think, when you're talking about science and understanding and analysis and data, that world is so real for me, but also community engagement, looking out for one another, fish fries, selling stocks and CDs in the salon. Like, they're both so real and they intertwine so much, which essentially is what the Village Consulting is made of. And so with a little bit about how I got here, and I know we'll dive deeper into the story, but I was pregnant in 2023 with my first child, and my only child at the moment. And I had a midwife for a good portion of my last trimester. And when I got to a certain point in my life, my personal life, where I felt like I did not have the ability to have the home birth that I planned, I talked to my midwife and I said, I think I want to plan for a C-section. And she was like, what? Okay, it's a whole different set of education. And I was like, yes, but this is what I feel is might happen. I don't know why, but this is where I'm at. I don't feel the same that I used to. And I started looking up hospitals nearby to see, because I hadn't done that before. And I think maybe a week and a half later, I started bleeding out and found out that I was having placenta abruption. And so had an emergency C-section, went under general anesthesia. And for those who don't know, that's not the typical way to have a C-section. You're usually awake and you can see everything, but I did not get the chance to see my child be delivered. And I also missed that golden hour because I had to wake up from the anesthesia. And then we were in the NICU for 30 days. And that's really where I realized where my education, my community, and, really just like my understanding of science and the body really came into play, even though this was my first time having a child, right? And so I think during that time of really understanding that I really had to stick up for this little baby who could not say anything. And I had to fight with everything in me, even though I was 1 or 2 days postpartum from a major abdominal surgery. But it took everybody. My mother flew out the next day because in her chair, I don't know if I told you this, but in her chair at the time when I called her and told her I was bleeding out, was an OB. She had an OB/GYN in her chair. And I was on FaceTime and I was like, hey, so I'm bleeding. I don't know if this is a bloody show. And she was like, go to the hospital. And I was like, okay, but I just put zucchini bread in the oven. Like, can I wait for it to be done? And they were like, no. And so the doctor told her, she was like, yeah, you need to book a flight right now and get out to your daughter because you don't know what's going to happen. And she could very well not make it. And so I had so many people show up for me on the phone. My midwife was on the phone with the doctors. My cousin, who's a doctor in New York, was on the phone. My brother, who's a doctor, got on the phone and talked to him. My pediatrician, when I was a kid, got on the phone and educated us on what was going on in the room. It was just this support system that I always took advantage of, maybe, or took for granted rather, and never really realizing if I had none of those people, what would have happened? And also realizing that I think that was the largest NICU bed hospital in the state. It was like 76 beds. And I think I only saw 3 or 4 parents. So how many of these kids also don't get the opportunity to have someone speak up for them and have someone have the same kind of background I had? And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. So that's where it started. Of course, there's more to the story, but that's where it kind of initiated, where I realized that this was not something that I wanted to be a privilege. I wanted this to be mandatory for where we are today, and hopefully just get us to a point of good health, just overall.
I love this. I love this. I have to interject because this is so good. This is so
Yes,
good.
I'm sorry. I was like, oh, dang it, I want to go.
So one, you said something a couple of times, and I know with all of us having science backgrounds, it is so important that we make sure people understand being in the weeds and attending to every detail is a skill. It is not a handicap. And so sometimes when people say, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, I know you've explained this already, but can you tell me in a different way? We want that. You want providers who are okay with you asking until you reach understanding. I remember when I was studying for boards, and I studied so much for my boards. And I remember a teacher telling me, don't miss the forest for the trees. When you're taking the boards, don't miss the forest for the trees. And I remember listening to her and taking that advice for the boards. But I said, somebody out here is going to have to be in the trees though, right? Because, and a friend said it the other day who lost his dad. Because some lab values were ignored. And he said, but if a tree falls in the forest, you got to investigate what made it fall. because otherwise you could lose the whole forest, right? And so we have to have people who are big picture people, and we have to not undervalue people who are in the trees, because both matter. And so I just want you to know that being in the details is so good. And when we've seen the most amazing stories, it's because people were in the details. The other thing I want to say is the importance of following your intuition. You had no proof that anything was going to go differently, except the proof that I think matters the most, and that is how you feel. We are going to be talking about objective things today, but I want everyone listening to understand, even if all your labs look good, your blood pressure looks good, your scans look good, if you feel like something is wrong, go to another provider, because they may be able to find something that the other didn't. And so we should never discount how we feel, because I think it's a gift. And so there's an acronym that people use for decision making called BRAIN, and the I is intuition. So what are the benefits of this decision? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What does my intuition say? And then what happens if I do nothing? But I think that a lot of times people downplay their intuition because there is no objective data that they feel is important enough to warrant investigation. But you just showed us that your intuition is sometimes all you need. And the thing is, you may not know what you need to do, but you know who you need to talk to, so that they can give you the information that you need in case things go the way you think they're going to go. So thank God for your intuition, because you could not have been here, right? Like you said.
Yes, very easily. I would definitely say that's really important. Really
It
important.
is so important. Okay, Jackie, come talk to us, Mama. Tell us all about you, lovely lady, and what brought you to this work.
Okay, well, I'm Jacqueline. Jackie is what I like to go by. I am trained as a medical laboratory scientist. How I got into that field is I really can't tell you specifically what happened. All I know is that I was a pre-med in undergrad, you know, child of Ghanaian immigrants. So the decisions were kind of like doctor, lawyer, you know, something that's stable enough that, you know, you can carry on and we won't have to worry about anything. But I remember one day I took an introductory course into medical laboratory sciences, and I just fell in love with the course. And I said, this is really cool. Like, I'm studying lab. I'm understanding what the blood looks like, different diseases, what different infections look like in the body that people go through. Like, everyone has been exposed to these things, but like the intricacies of it. And, you know, the path to med school, I said, you know, maybe this is not what I want to do necessarily, but I want to focus in on laboratory. So I don't know how I got into that class. To this day, I don't remember, but you know, I see that as a blessing because that led me to the path where I'm at now. And so just going through finishing school and working at so many different hospitals, like level 1 trauma centers, rural areas, outpatients, emergency rooms, standalone facilities, I've been able to see, and I've traveled across the country, like working in different labs. I've been able to see the commonality of lab results and kind of like what it looks like in a general population. And I've been able to see some of the rarest of rare diseases or infections for people and what the numbers actually present like in the body. Because again, working as a scientist, we work in the lab, we're not patient facing, which, you know, sometimes is okay because like dealing with the person is a lot. And I respect to all of the healthcare workers that are patient facing because that is a completely different ballgame. But also understanding the lab results and actually how to get to those results, that's really where I wanted to focus. And it's so amazing how someone can, like you're saying, your results might be normal, but you physically, like as a person, completely different. I'm like, oh, I have normal results right here, but if you're not feeling well, please find somebody else to see maybe we're missing a certain test. Maybe that one test was not tested in the gamut of tests, and that's going to tell you something, you know? So having people understand what these values are themselves first to get their baseline. And then, okay, well, if this is your baseline, you're not feeling well, let's move on to the next part and see like what can be done for you. It's kind of how I wanted to present laboratory results. And even with the lab component, I wanted to veer out of the lab a little bit just to get more perspective. And so I got my master's in public health because I wanted to be like, what else can I do with with the laboratory. Like I can't just sit in the lab for the rest of my life with all of this knowledge. Like I have so much knowledge. Like I try to, I like to brag about it a little bit because I feel like we don't brag enough. But I've been exposed to so many different facets of like the nation's like lab results and how it presents that a lot of my peers may not have been able to because they've been at one hospital or one laboratory for a long time. So I said, how can I use my lab results and my public health background to help as many people as possible? Because public health is literally helping as many people as possible. It's not from like an individual perspective. It's what can we implement to help as many people as possible? So combining those two, that's kind of where I am. And I started like a social media page on like Instagram and TikTok to educate people on their laboratory results and how best they can understand, because science is cool. People really do love science and they love their bodies and they love understanding it. They just might not have been exposed to it. And I would love to help people do that. So
I love that. I love both of your stories. And before we talk about how your stories intersect, I would love to just ask you both, if you had 5 lab values that you think everyone should know, what would they be? And then if you feel comfortable, explain what they mean. And if you don't, I mean, I can tell you, I can give you some to explain, but I just would love to hear y'all's take so people can, if they never go to the doctor or they've never been, then, you know, why would you go? What numbers would you want to know? And how can they help you live a healthier life? Because we are living longer as a nation, but that doesn't mean we're living with the best quality of life. And I feel that sometimes, like if people check their A1C or they check their hemoglobin levels or their vitamin D levels, or I don't know, just think their kidney function, you know, if they checked earlier, then could we not be more proactive about the way that we live our lives? So yeah, please, if it's 5 apiece, and then listen, I'm ready to learn.
I mean, you just named my top 3 actually.
Okay.
I was like, ding, ding. I was like, okay, well, let me figure out some more. Definitely. Imani, did you want to go first? Did you want me to?
Oh no, because you know I would have given you all 10. So
well, I was gonna say, can you take general, Jackie, and then Imani, could you take moms? Like what we should know before we get pregnant, or what do you think?
I can,
yeah.
What I can offer, right? Because I tell this all the time when I'm like pitching, and Jackie is such a blessing because I give her so many things to do. Because I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna do all this stuff, and I'm like, Jackie, can you do this? This is not my background. What I can offer is like the quality side of it and like the missing pieces, how to get to the missing pieces. Because I don't, medical lab is not my background, but laboratory settings and like lab analysis and like making sure things are done properly and correctly. And then if I can take maybe the intuitive side, like, okay, all of these things, great. This is what I think I'm feeling. I can take that side. So
okay, I'll start it off then. I'll start it and then I'll hand it and you complete it and wrap it up. She does that real good. She wraps it up and like presents it in a way that everyone's like, ooh, and I'm like, thank God, because it couldn't have been me. So first to start off, definitely your hemoglobin A1C. Like I say, everyone needs to get that drawn, analyzed, and understood. Did you want me to explain it afterwards, or do you want me? Okay, cool.
No, explain it now as you go.
Yeah.
I'll let you explain one by one.
So your hemoglobin A1C is a 3-month kind of like frame or like a peek at your blood sugars within 3 months. So if you are at risk for pre-diabetes, if you are also in the diabetic range, your hemoglobin A1C will tell you what your 3-month progress has been. So say you are pre-diabetic and you are given medication or you do lifestyle changes to make sure you can get out of the pre-diabetic range. You want to take your A1C at the beginning of your journey and then 3 months later to see if there have been any changes that you've actually made a progress. So I definitely, A1C hands down is like the one that I advocate for the most. Definitely kidney function. So I would just say a whole overall CMP, so a comprehensive metabolic panel, would be your best bet because it shows not only just your kidney function, it'll also show your liver function. It'll also show your electrolytes to make sure your sodium and potassium, your CO2s, to make sure everything is in balance. Those electrolytes really keep your body in balance. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of how important having not too much sodium or not too much potassium are in your body, and making sure you're hydrated. Again, kidney functions, and lipids as well. So lipids are looking at your fats. So your good fats, your bad fats really is what we're trying to make sure you don't have too much of. Cholesterol is all included in that CMP, to make sure that, we're looking at your good cholesterol, which you want to have a lot of, and your bad cholesterol, you don't really want to have too much of, but balance. Everything is in a balance. The body is in a balance. I'm gonna name that. I'm gonna take that as 3 tests so far. Okay. And then the last 2, let's see, if I had to have someone, I always say, but this is for me because I do have a history of working in the blood bank. So making sure people get their blood transfusion. I think it's very important for people to know their blood type. Like hands down, because you never know what situation, because God forbid you get in an accident and you do need blood. We're currently on a blood shortage throughout the nation, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. And we only have so many O negatives, which is a universal donor that anyone can receive. We have a limited amount that we can provide to everyone. And then if you know your blood type and you're able to communicate that when, God forbid, an accident happens, or maybe it's already on your chart, we can provide you your actual blood when you need a transfusion. And I really think that is one of the most helpful things as possible, because there's times where during natural disasters, because I live in Houston, Texas, natural disasters, we can't get blood in. So we only have maybe 25 units of O-neg on our shelves. And you never know what could happen. There could be moms who come in with like placental ruptures or any type of accident. They're priority. So we're having to give moms those blood, but you never know who can come in with a car crash at the same time. Something else happened, then our O-negs are gone. So highly suggest getting your blood type and knowing your blood type. And I think that's helpful. And then last thing, the last test. Ooh, this is a good one. You think I would have this memorized in my head, like my top 5 tests. It's a good video idea as well. Liver, kidney. We talked about vitamin D, didn't we?
You didn't mention that one. I thought.
Okay, then yes, vitamin D. You would be surprised, first of all, because we spend a lot of time indoors on our phones. A lot of us are deficient in vitamin D. And that affects not only our skin, that affects a lot of our organs and how they process, making sure that they're working properly. You want to make sure it also processes calcium creation, and there's just a lot. It's a multi-factor thing. So it's like less vitamin D, your intestines are not working as best as they could be as well. So I highly recommend people get those tested, and at least spending at least 15 minutes outside in the sun with sunscreen, because you don't want skin cancer or any type of illness. So those are my top 5.
I love that. I love that. I have a question about iron and thyroid. So
Thank you. I was like, I know I'm missing something.
That iron.
And I have a thyroid issue, so you think I would have suggested that?
well, I'm just wondering. So I feel like a lot of times people get their hemoglobin levels checked, but not iron.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that one is checked over the other, or is it just assumed that if your hemoglobin is doing well, that your iron then has to be doing well? What is the reason? And then what would then be an indication that someone needs to have their iron levels checked?
So most of the time when people go get their blood drawn, they get a complete panel called a complete blood count. And in that panel is a hemoglobin, which checks to see your hemoglobin levels, which also include iron. Usually, I say usually, if your hemoglobin levels are at an adequate number within range, that should be fine. That being said, there are so many different components to iron you have your actual iron levels, you have transferrin, which is transporting your iron to the different parts of your body. You also have ferritin, which are the stores of iron. So hemoglobin is one indicator, but it doesn't show the whole picture. And again, especially for women or people who have menstrual cycles, your hemoglobin could be a little bit lower than usual on those cycles, could be a little bit higher, just depending on how your body is. But it doesn't necessarily tell the complete story of whether you could be anemic or not.
Yeah, because if you have it stored, but it can't be transported, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are other tests that would need to be drawn. So the whole gamut would be your hemoglobin, your iron, your transferrin. So I think we call it the TIBC, the total binding capacity for iron as well. That's a whole other test that also needs to be collected to get the full picture.
Yeah. Okay. And then thyroid. So when would someone go and get their thyroid levels checked?
I could speak for myself specifically. If you are having unknown weight gain or weight loss, extreme fatigue, brain fog, which is a big symptom. I don't think people really realize that can be associated with your thyroid as well. And kind of like metabolism issues. So maybe you're gaining weight like super exponentially. Definitely look into that. I specifically had hives pop up on my skin that were actually due to like stress, increased cortisol, that also were triggered by my thyroid. So there's a lot of different factors. So I think people should just, as a baseline, add that to the top 5, get your thyroid checked, because the thyroid tells a lot. It controls a lot about the body. It controls literally your heat, your temperatures, your metabolism, all of that. And with your thyroid, don't just get your TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. Get your FT4 and your FT3. So those are the 2 hormones that are made from your thyroid, because your TSH, which is your thyroid, might be fine, but that FT4 and that FT3, the hormones that your thyroid is actually making, might be low or might be super high. So those are also telltales.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Because I'm going to clip that. I want people to really learn the importance of taking the labs. And I mean, and it's just a draw. I think that sometimes people are afraid to go in because they don't know what to expect. But it's so worth it to go in and just know your numbers. Imani, in addition to what you're going to do to package it all together, I would love for you to tell us, how do people keep track of their labs? Do you have recommendations for that year over year, how to track and see how they change? Because a snapshot is good, but knowing your trend over time is great. And I feel like everything is in different places depending on where you went to go get your labs done. So do you have tips about how to keep things organized so they can be better utilized by, just for yourself and looking at them, but also by whoever is going to be caring for you? And then what does a full medical record review look like, right? So we're talking about labs right now, but what else should we be looking for after we've gone and seen a provider?
So, okay, to answer your first part, this was something that Jackie and I talked about a while ago. Your medical lab binder. Like, what does that look like to compile? And I think we are in a digital age, right? But a lot of our people, and a lot of people in general, especially our seniors, or just people that don't have technology access the same way, or their systems that they utilize are not as advanced as other cities or states. I really say go for a full printout. And that is understanding the process of requesting your medical records from the institution itself. Like, that was something that we want to incorporate in some of the events that we do in the future, just really going step by step of teaching you how to access your medical records, because you have the right to them, to be able to pull them and include everything possible. And so I did this last year for 2 different hospital systems. And the questions that they ask are, do you want to include like just your labs? Do you want to include some of the notes? Do you click it all? Get it all, because it's all yours. and get one dedicated binder, a really big, early 2000s big 3-ring binder. Get a hole puncher or go to your library. and get it hole punched, maybe laminated if possible, or just the sleeves to protect it so it doesn't fade, and get everything printed out. And I think to answer your second question, and I'll package it all together in a minute, but to answer your second question as to how, like, what you should be asking in addition to getting your labs, right? So everything that Jackie said is 1000% on point, obviously. I'm learning as we're talking, but I also think when you are able to compile maybe years even of your records to understand what's been going on throughout your life, I think the next thing is to be able to share the stories of what's going on in your life to complement the lab results, right? So my labs from 2023, I was mostly pregnant. That's something maybe 15 years from now, I might forget which year it was per se, and just be able to like, oh yeah, my labs were, this was high this one time, and just point it out. But what were you going through? Where were you living? What was your, what was your situation at home? Were you working? Were you walking? Were you drinking your water? And I think being able to express that, even if it's just on your own. So if you just have a journal in your phone to be able to document and timestamp, I think that could be very helpful to complementing the data, because I do think, especially during pregnancy for me, the stress, and I was one of the, oh, my labs are normal, I'm exercising, I'm on flights, I'm out here, I'm doing this, I'm drinking my coconut water, I'm drinking my smoothies. And I had everything was right on paper, but my personal life was, we were working through some things. So, and I had therapy also, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your body isn't taking a hit. And I think to come back, because I wrote some things down after Jackie was speaking of things that I would suggest kind of to intertwine it all. What I would say from my experience and other people's experiences, the first thing I would say is repeat testing. Repeat testing is your right. It doesn't mean you have to have everything done because you don't like the person that did it that way or you had a bad day. But if you feel like the results don't necessarily reflect what you understand, then it's okay to ask for repeat tests. And I think that's also where we can come in, and other organizations can come in with educating on what these labs mean. So, if your feeling is kind of like, okay, I was right, or, oh, maybe I wasn't, maybe I just didn't understand what this was supposed to reflect. So that was number one. Number two, I think, Jackie, was it the A1C, or you said, or is it the hemoglobin? You said something about
Hemoglobin A1C. Yeah, the A1C. Mm-hmm.
And then you get it retested again to see what the progress was, or the difference. So that's a question I would say is good to ask, because someone like me who travels a lot and it's just all over the place and thinks some tests are one and done, and I don't need to see anything differently, I would definitely ask the question, okay, is there any point in time I should get another test done to make sure that we're on the track? If I make any changes, if any medication or holistic things are provided or done, that we're seeing a difference or not seeing a difference. I think that's important to ask. And solutions for problems. So you get a result that's not so good. If your cholesterol is too high, if your hemoglobin is too low, understanding what your options are. And this is a very tricky question when you're in a medical setting, because they typically have one or two options because that's what they like, that's what they prefer, and it's based on their experience. And I think what's really important is to channel into the intuition and how you feel in your body to make sure that whatever solution that is, it aligns with you, because there are always more. There's always something else that can happen that is probably still safe and still something that can get you to your goal. And I think it's something that we have to be mindful of, but also be careful because of some of the pushback that we get. So formulating the question in a way of, thank you for sharing, these options with me. Do you have another provider that may have other options considering what's going on, someone that I can talk to, just so I can have all of my options out on the table so I can review it and look at it. Forming it like that versus, I don't like the way you do things, I'm gonna take this outside. I'm gonna go to another hospital. Just trying to find ways to make sure you're still advocating for yourself, still doing things that align with your values. Because if you don't, even if the solution will occur and it be positive on labs, how you feel is still extremely important, you know? And I think that's something that we want to make sure is on top of it. So number 4, I have the iron and thyroid, because you mentioned it. Now, iron, you don't know, iron is a sensitive spot, because that's what happened with my little baby in the hospital last year. And I learned more than I probably would have preferred, because I feel like I need a degree now, you know, like it was a lot of information, and it all came down to asking the right questions and trying to listen for the full story. So I think when it comes to iron and the Black community with sickle cell, understanding where you go to receive support for any kind of iron issue will likely be from the perspective of an office or an organization that deals with a lot of people that always have issues or have lifelong issues dealing with sickle cell or the trait or some type of deficiency. And so I think when it comes to asking the right questions, I don't think I knew about ferritin until Mael was like 13 months old or something like that. And my midwife, who I'm with now in the house here, was the one to explain it to me. She basically broke down everything you broke down. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. And when she said iron stores, I was like, okay, wait a minute. My son, when we were in the NICU for 30 days, his glucose stores hadn't come in fully, but we never talked about iron. There was just not a conversation. Nobody brought it up. But as you all know, and as people may know, when you get your glucose tested, it's likely like a fingerprint. It's not always a full blood draw.
Right.
And so my son was 4 pounds and 5 ounces when he was born. So he was a very tiny little baby. And multiple times a day, almost every 3 hours or every 6 hours, depending on the day, for 30 days, we were pulling blood, right? And so thinking about that process and how that loss happened, and we never checked for iron because that wasn't the pressing issue. The hospital had a pressing issue. His glucose needed to be present in order for his brain to function, so on and so forth. So we addressed that. That's their job. So now 13 months later, he has a hemoglobin of 3, which is dangerously low, right? And I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this normal? Because I don't know, right? I'm not in the medical field. And they're saying, no, this isn't normal. And I said, okay, well, how could it have gotten this low? And what are the signs of it looking like? When I was pregnant, I manifested as in baby, but was he a little too zen? Was he a little too calm? And they said, it's very difficult to see it, especially when they're younger, because they're not walking yet. They're not moving a whole lot. So you can't really see low energy on a baby the same way. But the easiest way and the most common way is to get tested just to make sure. And so when we were going through all of the questions as to how it got to this point, their concern was, how do we resolve? So that's blood transfusion, that's iron supplementation, right? And it's like, okay. And then I had the questions. I'm like, okay, but what's the root of it? Where did this come from? Because I don't want it to happen again. What if it drops? And I'm, first time mom brain asking all the questions. And they're like, I'm not sure, but this is it. And he was like, well, does dad have sickle cell? Do you have sickle cell? And I'm like, dad has sickle cell. I don't have sickle cell. So you should just have the trait. And they're like, well, it could be this, it could be that. And so I would say a few things. There's a few barriers that can happen. Your understanding of the entire complexity of your blood or of the body, right? It's complex. Why doctors are in school forever, right? So they can understand all the things. And so understanding what questions to ask. So I would say iron and anything else. What other tests are available surrounding this topic? That's a very simple question that could probably get you to maybe answers like ferritin and the other things that involve. Because what happened that I finally went to another institution to ask is I compared this experience to when he was first born. If he didn't have his glucose stores, then he probably didn't have some of the other stores, right? Like, it's kind of just like an A to B. It's just one of those comparison things. And they were like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I'm like, okay, so I wasn't crazy when I was trying to tell y'all. This isn't what you thought it was, but it's important to understand because that gives you a sense of peace as well. And it also make sure that you understand that it also almost had nothing to do with you. Like, this is something that happened because of the events, and that you didn't really have control, but you do have control over asking questions, advocating for your child and yourself, knowing your blood type and your child's blood type on hand, and tying it all back with like the lab binder and just like your medical records and putting it all together. I carried around our medical records to every single visit because my child was born in Arizona. And so some people may know or may not know, when you are going to an institution, they can request medical records from another institution or office, but that takes time. And in order for you, I believe, to get the best outcome for the experience that you're in at that moment, you should have it on hand to be able to give to them in person to read. It's their responsibility what they do after that. But the best way to do it is to have everything with you if you can, and have it presented in a manner that they can read it or their staff can read it, and make sure that you have things highlighted and that you want to point out to tell them what's been going on. And I think a nice compliment to that would be like the story or what was going on, maybe some highlights of what was happening in your life. Did you lose your job at this time? Were you able to pay your bills at this point? Were you moving? Did you, have a family member, event? Did you travel? Whatever it was. Did you come back from another country? Different things like that, I think, are so important to really tie it all together. The story really means everything when it comes to your labs.
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. So both of you, I just feel like this conversation thus far has just been so empowering. I think about, Jackie, the things that you told people they should have tested. It automatically makes me think, what if people did this when they weren't even planning to conceive, right? Why would you not check all the things that you say? Because I think about it, kidney function, our kidneys are going to work at least 50% harder starting around week 20 of pregnancy. And then it'll continue to work harder through the first 2 weeks after delivery. So if we're going into pregnancy with a kidney problem that we didn't know was there, that's why things can arise that we didn't expect. And then we think about hemoglobin and iron and how we know that number can trend down during pregnancy. Baby needs more blood flow and oxygen and needs to practice making its own hemoglobin. And so knowing if we're starting out at a deficit is important. And there are some studies out that link anemia in the first trimester to preeclampsia in the third. And so if we're trying to avert preeclampsia, it's not just what's my blood pressure, but what are my lab values looking like? You mentioned thyroid hormones, which are important, as you said, in metabolism and temperature regulation. They're also important in fertility and getting pregnant, right? That hormone controls other hormones, the production of other hormones and the balance. And so sometimes people are thinking, I'm infertile. We got to check the numbers that matter, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you need a fertility specialist. It's like, what doctor do you need? So as y'all were talking about this, I was thinking, okay, so someone has a blood problem, we should think hematologist. Someone has a kidney problem, we should think a kidney doctor or a nephrologist. If they have a thyroid problem, an endocrinologist. And so choosing some of the people and just investigating or getting to know the people in the area before you actually need that doctor, I think is so important. The worst thing that can happen is that you need a provider and then you just take whatever is presented to you, as opposed to doing your own research and seeing whose values align with mine, whose bedside manner aligns with mine, who known for answering questions and taking time versus taking the most amount of patients. I know a lot of people, they don't like to wait. When my husband and I, we were looking for a cardiologist and we were waiting for I think we waited for like 4 hours. But when he came into our room, he was with us for 90 minutes. And it made so much sense why everybody was waiting, right? And so just wanting to figure out who's the best person to be on your team. And the worst time to figure that out is when you're in the midst of it. I always think about how recruitment takes place in sports. The coach is watching the player for years. before they decide, hey, I want them to be on our team. And I just think we have to do that work, even though we don't know, Imani, like we don't know what's going to come up and who we're going to need, but we know the different categories of doctors. And so maybe doing a little investigation and in that lab binder, having a list of trusted providers that you might reach out to should a problem arise. And then Imani, when you were talking about having your numbers with you, that is the most, when I say, I mean, it just makes sense. They don't have to wait on anything because you have everything they could possibly need in the palm of your hands. It is so smart. I think everybody should do it. Everybody should do it. And I know we're in a society where it's like, we want to save paper, save paper. We waste paper anyway. We might as well use it on stuff that we need that could ultimately save our lives. And then the other thing I think is important, just like you said, some people will give you options. I remember when my son was born and his hemoglobin was low, people asked me about, do you believe in delayed cord clamping or do you think it's like woo-woo? And I'm like, no, I think that if something's delivering oxygen, nutrients, hormone, like to your baby, then having as much of it transfer over before you clamp the cord makes sense. But with my son, his cord was severed before it got severed before it was clamped, if that makes sense. We had a little bit of a complication there. So he didn't get all of that and oxygen and nutrients. And my midwife would have wanted that to happen. And I found with him, his hemoglobin was low. And she was like, well, we could do iron, and I said, well, I really don't want to do that. Can I just change my diet and just kind of see what happens? And she was like, sure. We do need to retest in 6 weeks though, and see if what you're doing is working. And if it's working, keep doing it. And if it's not, then we'll have other options for you. And I appreciated that so much. So yes, that test retest, that's the best way to do science. If you don't do a test retest, nobody's even going to consider your results valid. And yet go and ask for retests sometimes for our labs. We're looking at, we already tested that. And it's like, yeah, but we need to retest. And then for people who are really resistant to taking pills, like vitamin D pills, let's say, sometimes people say, well, I'll just try getting more sun. Well, you can try it, but let's also then get your vitamin D levels retested, because sometimes it's just so hard to get out into the sun as much as we need. Sometimes we think about what's in the sunscreen, even though it's good, it is blocking out both the good and the bad rays. And so we have to consider, are we doing enough? Can we do enough with the lifestyle we're currently in? And I love that advice to couch your values in a story. Because if you were working in a plant and you were never exposed to the sun, so you're in the plant from 8A to 8P and no lunch break, then during those years, your vitamin D levels may have been low. But then you have a job where you work remotely and you take calls outside, and then you have a season where you have kids and they're playing t-ball and baseball, and so you're outside all the time. That may be not only, it may not just explain your labs, but it also helps to guide your lifestyle. Take a list of what was happening during that season when your labs were great, and then decide, what am I going to do now? How can I take elements of that and repeat them so that I get the numbers that I know I need for my body to function the best. So I love that y'all did this with, oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, so now we have to get to the village thing, right? So how did y'all two decide to work together? Because I remember, Imani, you talked about being a connector, and I think it's so beautiful that you do this, and it really makes me teary. I cry about a lot of stuff, but my children will say, my mommy she cried, she's always so happy, she cries so much. But it's because you really do. You just connect people for the sake of the greater good. You're like, how can I connect your organization with other people so that the maternal health crisis is no longer a thing? How can I connect with other people so that they can fill in my gaps, so that the service I provide is comprehensive, so that the community's health is better? It is like you and Jackie couldn't have been a more perfect pair, because for her, she said, how can I help the most people? This is what I want to do. So I'm going to get this whole degree to figure out how I'm going to help more people. And so with your passion and your just desire to love people, to connect organizations, and then hers to help people and make sure that they're as healthy as possible, as informed as possible, it just makes sense that y'all would get together. And so when you said you found her online, I was like, God put her, like he just put her there for you to find her. But can you tell us about your journey to like partnering and what you hope to see through the Village Consulting. Because it's going to be beautiful. It's already beautiful, but I want to hear from you all what you're interested in.
Do you want to go first?
Girl, I'm like,
Don't do
I
it.
mean-
'Cause we'll all be out here.
Like just from the first thing. Like I said earlier, I was creating TikTok, Instagram videos. I actually started during COVID because a lot of people were asking me questions about like, what about the, the vaccine? Like what's going on in the labs? Because before, this is an insider scoop, right? Before they actually announced that COVID was officially a thing, in the lab, we were hearing there's some type of respiratory illness going on that we're not too sure about. And I had been on a trip going to Ghana, and I had brought gloves, wipes, face masks for like my family when we were going on the trip. And I was like, wipe down your seats. You don't know what's going on. Everyone thought I was crazy. When we came back from Ghana, thank God we did. That was the next month they closed everything down. And that's when COVID was a thing. And I said, telling y'all, so during that time, a lot of people, because I'm in the lab, I'm the one running all of these COVID tests. I'm giving all of the different plasma to the patients that are coming in with COVID to see if this is helping. A lot of people were asking me questions. So I started making videos explaining all of the different trials or different COVID, like what vaccines are, et cetera, et cetera. And from that, I was like, I can explain laboratory results the same way I just did all of these videos so people understand what's going on. So then I started, making more videos, started different concepts like this is what your cells look like in your blood, X, Y, and Z. And yeah, just going through the momentum of doing that. And then I got a message in my direct messages, somebody in my DMs saying, hey, hi, my name is Imani. I'm also a scientist, and I would love to connect with you. And I said, okay, cool. Let's connect. And from there, like again, Imani was saying in the park, and we're just talking about like all of these ideas and like what we want to do. And she was talking about the Village Consulting, and I was like, this is a really great, like, not even like service or product, like a conglomerate of like trying to provide Black people, brown people, the care that they deserve to have when it comes to not even just like modern medicine itself, but a holistic approach to medicine. Because as much as I love modern medicine, I respect it like wholeheartedly. I do believe that a holistic approach is necessary in certain cases, because I don't think everybody should just be taking medication if you can eat it. If you can eat your medicine, eat your medicine. If you have to take medication just because of the state that you're in order for you to get to a certain baseline, that's also fine. But the integration needs to happen. I don't think one is better than the other. So, yeah. Imani, if you want to continue.
Yeah. So it's so funny because from my like previous mind coming into, and I'm just so, you know this because you all have known me for a little while now, but I will jump in somebody's DMs. I do not care. I will send an email. I just told Jackie on an audio message like an hour ago, I sent out sponsorship request emails to companies for an event that I thought about last week. I have no shame in connecting. And so I want to say maybe like 2 weeks before I reached out to Jackie, I was actually looking at master's degrees to get my clinical science. So I was like, oh, I got to figure out how to do this. I don't know anything about this. And then I was like, Imani, you have a child. You also know a lot of people, and there are people that already have this degree. They already know what they're doing. They already are doing it. This is not for you. You are just supposed to connect with somebody. And it took a lot, because I feel like even throughout my life, I've always had to pause, because I feel like, the superwoman thing, you just got to do everything. It's like, if I see a problem, I need to figure out the solution. I don't rely on other people for it. You do it yourself. But that has gotten us not that far in society, right? To just try to do everything on your own. And we really need to start leaning in. And so I was like, you know what? Let me see who's already doing this. And I just searched, I think I searched clinical labs on Instagram. And Jackie's beautiful self just popped up. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what she's talking about. Let me just send her a message, because her vibe is just so great. And then eventually, like after I sent the message, then I looked at her videos.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is perfect. This actually aligns. And that's really how it started. It was like I thought I was gonna have to go and get my master's or PhD and just do the most for no reason. And I was like, okay. I was like, this works. And so I reached out and she responded. I was so grateful. And honestly, I think that was like July, August, September. I don't even know. It was hot outside.
Yeah, it was
Um,
what was it?
I have no
A
idea.
year, really.
It feels like it was so long ago. And
It
then
does.
we just like kept hitting it off. And we finally like got on a rhythm to just like keep communicating and keep talking. And I wouldn't say in like 2 months or so, we got our first contract. And it was like, I remember like having our like auditors like, we're really doing this.
Right.
We really thought about it and we're really doing it and people like really like us. And it's just been pairing so well. And I'm so grateful because I would not like have been able to get this far without her. So yeah.
Stop.
So sweet.
I know,
Oh
I
my
should bust
A
goodness.
napkin. Like she says that she's grateful, but I'm super grateful for her because she, like you're saying, she's a connector, and the ideas that she has and she really brings to the table, even if they're just kind of like, I literally thought of this second, like, what if we do this? And for us to kind of like put our brain powers together, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is possible if you just do X, Y, and Z. She's like, the logistics. And I was like, yeah, because we can do that. And like lately, because I got an iPad, I'll like sketch out things. She's like, this is exactly what I was thinking in my head. Or like, I'm so glad you wrote that down, because the ideas and all of the projects and like the workshops and the flyers and all of the things that we're creating, it's just married really well. And she kind of also gives me the confidence to like get to getting, because again, I'm also doing all these extra things and I'm just like, but I need to sit down and figure out and get everything that I said I'm going to do. So she also provides that, and I'm grateful for her. So
I
it's been a
love
great
that.
journey.
I love that. Okay, so I guess the last part of this is, what do you offer? What are you all providing to the people who come to you? And then is it more so on because you said you got a contract, is it more with organizations, with their employees? Is it with individuals and their families? If someone came to you all, what could they expect? And how do they take advantage of your services?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I would say that we have been in a almost like parallel worlds, because we're in our first contract and we're having communications with a lot of other health organizations. And it's that one that is directly related to cardiovascular health in Harlem. So that's a completely like new world for me. And I think it's allowed us to really kind of just like think more and understand how collaborations could work. But it's led us to I would say our first hosted workshop, that's coming up April 30th in Harlem. And that is dedicated to educating the community on their lab results and self-advocacy. So everything that Jackie talked about today, we'll probably mention some of that during the workshop, but also just being able to break it down so simple for people so they can be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And then we'll have, some lab explanations afterward with Jackie. I like to emphasize who will be doing that, just so we're but I am here for all the other parts of it.
Of course.
And so what we offer, I would say we've kind of framed it in a way of having 3 pillars. So we have medical lab education, which is a lot of what we talked about today, and the importance of that because education is still very critical. And then we have the medical story fellowship, which is something that we are hoping to bring to life very soon. In any capacity. And it doesn't have to be through an organization. So you hear the word fellowship and it sounds very official. But if you simply want to share your story with us, or share it so that it can be shared to the community, we want to learn more about what people really need on a day-to-day to make things better so we can take what we know, take our connections and bring it into policy and real life change, and take you along the journey every step of the way and not forget about you, because we are a village together. And the last part is medical green book. And that's essentially what I've been building over time. It's just connecting, just like connecting Ashley. And it's so crazy how things have just like happened so naturally. Just me coming out to Georgia last year, meeting her in the park. And I met her to connect her to my friend. Like, I didn't meet her for the benefit of me. And it just happened that when she added me on Facebook, she was like, "Oh, you went to VCU? Oh, you do hair? Oh, I need my hair done." And I went to VCU. And it just, I went to do her hair and I was like, "Well, this is actually what I'm starting and this is where I'm at." And she was like, "Well, I need to connect you." And that's how we got connected. And it's like, that's the power of storytelling and communicating and just showing up authentically. And so the medical green book, essentially, the way that I have decided to kind of like believe in that space is it's your safe space to come to get providers who support you. So they may not always look like you. We're going to try our best to do, what people need, but these are spaces and places and people that will listen to you and trust what you're saying and believe what you're saying. And for those who don't know about the Green Book, the Negro Motorist Green Book, it was essentially safe places for Black people to go and travel as they went throughout the country. And so that's essentially the same thing with the Medical Green Book. Places you can go if you're nervous about CPS, which we didn't even talk about. But if you're thinking about things about, system impacts and you're thinking about maybe drug substance use and things like that, where you're just not sure if the people will hear you before they judge you, these are places that you can go. And we want people to feel comfortable enough. And so to put it all together, we want to be a hub for people to come to. So have an email, questions@villageconsulting.org. You can ask any of the above, anything sciencey, anything with connecting to people, and anything with education. We really want to make sure that if you have a problem, if you have a concern, you can come and we can do the work to figure out who to connect you to wherever you live. And the hope is that one day it can be in these communities. So even in this community that I'm in, which is like a suburb or a rural area out of Atlanta, it's like the people in your community, you have doctors here. There are doctors that probably live here. There are some psychiatrists that probably live here. There are people right around you that can be a phone call away for you to come to. That's the hope, instead of it having to feel like I have to call an NAACP to help me, even though they're a great resource. It's so they have to go through so many channels and then they have to do X, Y, and Z. And we just wanted it to be, I can go here. Hey, I have this problem. Are you able to support me? That's where we want to get to for any kind of concern. I like to always channel Scandal as my inspiration for this. Shout out, we were not sponsored by them, but
Right. Not yet.
not yet.
Right.
Shout out if you get this.
Sound.
But that's where it comes from. When Olivia Pope, she had OPA and she could fix anything. You came to her with, whatever kind of problem. And I was like, I want to be that for our people. I want to be able to show up. And with the capacity of people that I have met along the way of my life, I'm like, there's no way that I can't find somebody to help somebody that knows somebody to get this solved. And with Jackie, she can explain it all. I don't even have to do anything. You just go ahead and call her. I think she's free. She might be in a meeting, but she'll call you back at 15.
Yes, I always call you back.
So that's what we do. That's what we offer. And we are going to continue to show up in spaces and really try to be forward facing and not behind. But all of this will also not just lead to community building and relationships and really better health outcomes and better quality of life outcomes. We're hoping for real system change and policy change from it. And so I kind of viewed this work as almost like full research, because I'm like, if we can get all of this data and all of these resources and connect all of these people, I wanted it to be irrefutable when we took it to the big people that signed the papers, say, hey, here, look, here are the results. Thank you so much. If you could sign this.
Yeah, and
And
pay
make
some
this
money,
law.
we'll get it done.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
So it's
Everybody
it's our
else does.
science backgrounds
Yes.
in full force. So
Yes.
And we need that. We need all of this. I think so. Throughout this entire conversation, what I really love is as a people, we thrive in community. And because of different just things that happened in history as recently as COVID, it seems like as a society, we are becoming more isolated during a time when we actually need to be more connected. And so the village, just even the name of it, is really calling us to go back to what we know works. And Jackie, when you talked about traditional medicine versus modern medicine and the need for both, there's just a huge need for both. And whether someone chooses one or the other or a combination of both is their choice. Not having options on the table is the problem that I see most often. And so thank you for putting options back on the table, for bringing information to people in a way that is easy to digest, for looking at the statistics and not allowing it to condemn an entire population of people, right? So the statistics say that we'll run into high blood pressure, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks as a people. And what you all are saying is we can use the data to avert those outcomes. That does not have to be our destiny. And we're going to walk hand in hand with you to make sure that it doesn't, that every piece is in place so that you can have the best chance of succeeding. And so I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for y'all coming on and talking and educating. Even more so, I'm grateful for what you do day to day to make sure that this information gets to as many people as possible. So I feel like that's my job. I was already telling Imani, I met this lady who goes by the 24-hour lab lady, and I said, y'all need to know her. And so I'll be meeting her in a week or two, but we'll connect you beforehand. And that way, it's like whoever is looking at the things that are most basic, most accessible to everyone, why not all get together and then we all solve problems together? Because doing it in silo is not working, as you said. So if there are any last tips that y'all want, y'all have my eternal gratitude. I'm just so grateful. This is so wonderful. Y'all are both so brilliant, and I'm grateful that you're sharing your brilliance with the world. Do you have any tips, anything you want to say that wasn't said? And then, of course, how people can follow you will be in the show notes, but you can say that as well.
oh,
You can go, Jackie.
I mean, at the end of the day, definitely get your labs drawn. As a baseline, if you haven't gotten it done in like 5-10 years, it wouldn't hurt you. It'd actually probably help you identify maybe you had maybe your stomach's been acting up a little bit more than usual. You know, you never know. Maybe your gut is not benefiting the way that you thought it would. Just get your labs drawn, see what's going on, and then go from there.
Yeah, thank you.
I wrote it down, and I'm trying to remember because I left my notebook in the other room. It's very mom of me. I would say, trust yourself wholeheartedly and don't stop until someone believes you. I mentioned this to, I don't know what we were typing or writing up, but I think we're talking about some of the problems that are in maternal health. And I said, we could talk about all of these issues, but when you're talking about relationships with people that have the power to make decisions for you or with you in the medical setting, believability is so important. And if they don't believe what you're saying, your truth, or any of the things that are happening in your life, you have to find someone that will, because they will take you to where you need to be. So trust your gut, trust your intuition, and also feel free to reach out to us. I feel like scientists have this thing about us, and but we're people, we be out here at the grocery stores too. Please reach out. We're so excited to talk to people and learn more and just meet you where you are, to support you in any way we can.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.